gather round, we've got a story to share. Richie and John, they always care. Championing voices, fierce and strong. Tune in, turn up, you can't go wrong. Life and love, they're here to fight. It's Newsday Tuesday, let's take a stand. With Richie and John, let's shake the land. Voices of truth in every sound. In this podcast world, our hope is found.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents Richie and John, the podcast that connects you with the people, events, headlines, and lifestyle interests of the global LGBTQ+ community. Here's Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Richie and John. We are here for Newsday Tuesday, which is when we do a roundup of the LGBTQ news that you can use, something to that effect. And I'm here, of course, with my co-host, John McMullen. John, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and I think it's funny you said news that you can use because there's a lot of things we're going to be talking about over the next 4 years, I have a feeling, are going to be things that you'll want to use to wipe your posterior with. And it's funny because I went to a luncheon since we've gotten together last. And when I went and used the restroom, the person who was hosting this luncheon meeting, they had a roll of toilet paper in their bathroom that was all sheets of Donald Trump's face on it.
Oh my God.
And I was there with the head of the Democratic Party here locally, and she had admitted that she found it quite amusing to be able to tidy herself up using that particular form of toilet paper.
That's very funny. Wow. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Well, we'll take our small wins where we can get them.
Of course, even if it comes down to wiping.
Yeah. And in a sort of a very brief little mention, because we've talked a lot on this show about DEI initiatives being canceled at various companies.
Right.
Recently, Apple's board has come out suggesting that shareholders not vote for an initiative to get rid of DEI. A conservative think tank had put up something, a shareholder vote to tank DEI at Apple. The board has resoundingly said, no, we like our DEI. Thank you very much. So, we had a good report out of Costco similarly. So we will bring you the wins as well as the losses.
I think it's important also to note, thinking about that, and I've had many friends who've worked for Apple and worked there at One Infinite Loop in Cupertino at their headquarters. And there really is a very diverse workforce environment there. And the benefits and the programs that Apple has in place and the way that they value their human resources is, I think, a very extraordinary example for what a lot of companies should be doing. But I would imagine that you would really tank shareholder value, not just kill a benefits program or a practice in the company by passing a shareholder ruling like that. And the reason being is that a lot of the innovation that happens there happens at the hands of people who just happen to be members of our community. And I can't imagine how many people would leave in a heartbeat from that organization if they were to do that, which then, of course, would have a downhill effect in turn. It would snowball, and it would lead to having products that are not as sexy. It would lead to having products that are not as functional and as innovative. And how does that benefit the shareholders in the end? Because sales will drop.
Yeah. And, I think we're going to see what happens in that regard, because another prominent tech company has run in the other direction. We talked on Saturday at length about the changes at Meta, aka Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. And they are continuing, specifically Mark Zuckerberg, the head of Meta, is continuing with his onslaught of mayhem. So,
yeah, in fact, here's a situation where first it was getting rid of DEI, and now as kind of a follow-on, they're getting rid of tampons. Tell me more.
Yeah, so Mark Zuckerberg has ordered that tampon dispensers be removed from men's bathrooms at Meta's offices in Silicon Valley, New York, and Texas.
Can I ask a question? Is anybody besides him and the other gentleman who used to work with various Republicans, anyone besides them that is of the male species that is having a period at Meta?
So, I mean, the reason why, there are a lot of companies where they have tampon dispensers in the men's restroom is obviously, to make things comfortable for trans and non-binary employees, who can use the bathroom that sort of most closely identifies with their gender identity. This is not something that anyone, like a tampon dispenser, is that real? Like, is that really so such a horrific waste of bathroom real estate that you just have to rip it out? No, this is making a point. This is telling, I think, the employees specifically, saying you have we don't care how you feel, actually. Like, I mean, it's one thing to kind of make a public policy change, get rid of DEI as this kind of broad initiative. We've seen it happening elsewhere, but to be so like laser focused that you're directing the removal of tampon machines from offices. I mean, don't you have anything better to do? I mean, as the head of a global organization than
you know what? I don't know anybody who has in their home, regardless of who lives in a house and which gender, has separate gender bathrooms, right? Mm-hmm. I think it's time for us to just go to genderless restrooms. If you need to relieve yourself, if you're a human being and you're capable of using a toilet or a urinal or whatever, welcome in.
Yeah. And I've seen, it can be done actually really nicely. I remember, I think the first major place I saw that was there was a Whole Foods in Bryant Park in New York. It was a new Whole Foods. And I went in and they had just bathrooms, and it's just this wall of single, use, single person toilets with full door, full enclosures, and then a bank of sinks. And so you just go in and you use whichever stall is available, and then you come out and everyone's using the sinks together. It's so simple that it's baffling to me that we're even having this discussion in 2025.
Yeah, this really, in my opinion, isn't a far stretch from the awful days in our history when people, as recently as the 1960s, were in public places like stadiums in Miami, not able to use the same facilities or the same water fountains because of the color of their skin. Mm-hmm. I think it's that stupid.
It's really ridiculous. And the thing is, this goes back to kind of Meta's bigger capitulation completely to this sort of Trumpian worldview. And he's really, Mark Zuckerberg has gone sort of almost crazily fully like red pilled, because he went on Joe Rogan and was spouting off things about that there should be more, quote, masculine energy in business, and that workplaces are too feminized and all of this kind of insane.
Wait, who did this?
This is Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg did this on Joe Rogan's show. And, and while he was at it, he also sort of took a pot shot at Apple and said that they hadn't done anything innovative in years. And I thought to myself, besides coming up with, remember when they changed the name Meta because they had that crappy AI, like metaverse, cartoon thing where Mark Zuckerberg was a cartoon in a like with an AR or VR headset. Mm-hmm. I mean, besides that and running a kind of geriatric, website for uncles to send racist memes to each other, i.e. Facebook, what has Meta been up to?
Yeah, and can I ask the question that really matters to these kind of people? When was the last time that Meta was working with a $1 trillion market cap?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question.
I don't think that they've ever been that successful to be valued at $1 trillion.
And at the end of the day, Meta, in terms of being innovative, Facebook is a tired, old, decrepit thing. We can all posit that. It is not fresh. It is not. I mean, the only thing most people use it for now is Marketplace, which essentially is just ripping off Craigslist, which itself is an old website. Right. And then they bought Instagram, and then they bought WhatsApp. So buying other things, and those are even tired. I mean, you mentioned the kind of brain drain possibility if Apple were to turn its back on DEI. I think we're going to see what happens at Meta. I would look at the writing on the wall and say this place is going down the tubes.
I would say that the whole environment is very ripe right now, And we talked about this the other day when we had our guest joining us from the Electronic Frontier Foundation. When Jillian York was with us, we did talk about the fact that these companies are potentially going to be losing people to doing their own innovative things, and they're not going to be bowled over like these people have because they've become so entrenched in being accountable to Wall Street.
And, and we're definitely, this show is always kind of focused, sort of on LGBTQ focused news. However, I think realistically, we are going to end up talking a lot about business in the next 2 to 4 years, because that's really kind of right now where a lot of this action is happening, in terms of the anti-DEI, things like Meta, and, with the sort of plutocrats and oligarchs kind of all circling the wagons and taking control of everything. That's going to be something that we have to pay attention to. So,
I think there's going to be a lot more people who are going to be into the idea of the elimination of billionaires. And I'm not suggesting that anybody should hurt them or do something that is unlawful to these people to get rid of them. But I do think that we're going to so change the attitude in this world about people who have reached that epitome of, wealth, that I don't think that they're going to be in an enviable position that much longer, because people will, over the next, say, 5-10 years, learn exactly how much these people are capable of destroying their personal lives.
Right.
If they haven't already.
And you have to wonder the question, a lot of what we're seeing out of the right and out of this Elon Musks of the world and the Trumps and everything is, at the end of the day, like a profound lack of empathy and understanding for other people's conditions. And you have to really think people who are multimillionaires and billionaires have been so insulated from the need for empathy. And in fact, many have made their money on lacking empathy and on specifically not paying attention to other people's well-being. And so when those are the people that are in charge, the policies that are going to come out of there are probably going to not be so great for most people. And I think you're right that it might take some really miserable conditions for a while for people to actually ultimately say, we've got to really sort of fundamentally change a lot of this.
Yeah, when I stop and think about how I've lost people in the last 15, 20 years, and I think about the fact that, it's really weird because I've had somebody who was in an airplane during 9/11. I've had somebody who has passed away, a couple of people who've been killed, murdered, and people who unfortunately have taken their own lives, and people who have lost their lives to drug addiction and so on. But by and large, the vast majority of people who I have personally lost that have been close to me in my life are people who have been dealing with battling cancer, various forms of it. And I myself am going through a little bit of a scare right now, not for the first time, but dealing with a cancer-related issue. And I have to tell you that when I recently saw a photograph of Elon Musk wearing an ugly Christmas sweater, and it basically said, "Fuck cancer research." It was such a silly little thing, but at the same time, it was such a huge thing to think that's really who these people are. They don't care. They have the money to not care. They don't care. They just don't care. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it bothers me that I have to care so much because they don't care at all. But this is what we're dealing with. These are the cards we are dealt. And unfortunately, I think that there were a lot of people who made really bad decisions at the voting booths this year, but what's done is done. And look, if you're listening to this program on the very first day that it launches on the web, we have 6 days. We're counting down 6 days until this shit show gets back underway. And that's next to nothing. Mm-hmm. So I think your life is going to be dramatically impacted in some way or other by this, where you've normally not had to necessarily feel like caring about politics and let other people worry about that shit. I think you're going to see that there's going to be reasons, probably too many reasons, for you to have to care about it this time around.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really true. But, in other sort of more worldly news, perhaps.
By the way, I got to tell you, this story, when I read it, when you sent it to me, it really cracked me up because I thought, like they haven't already?
Yeah.
Like for years and decades and centuries?
Like, it's kind of like the whole point of the thing. Right. Okay. So the Vatican has released new guidelines for gay men entering the priesthood, emphasizing that, the priesthood involves a celibate lifestyle. This is announced by the Italian Bishops' Conference, and the guidelines signify a shift from previous concerns that Pope Francis had expressed about gay clergy leading double lives. The clarification is that the priesthood training should focus on embracing chastity as a freely chosen commitment. While respecting individuals, the church maintains that sexually active gay men will not be admitted to seminaries or holy orders. And the announcement follows a controversy sparked by Pope Francis last May when he used a derogatory term regarding gay seminarians. Though he later apologized, the incident highlighted ongoing tensions.
What was that term? Did you look it up? Do you see what it was that he said?
Something in Italian, and it's very flowery, and I think it basically means fags. Yeah. And so despite all of this, Francis has advocated for tolerance and respect for the LGBTQ community during his papacy. And the Vatican plans a pilgrimage for LGBTQ Christians in 2025, underscoring a message of inclusivity within the church. So basically, the gist of the story is now, for the first time ever in history, gay men can become priests as long as they're celibate. Why we're laughing about it is because obviously for forever,
they've been in there and they've been doing it while they're doing it.
Or not doing it, but they've been there. Yeah. They have been there. Exactly. And the thing too is I think back, especially before kind of gay liberation and sort of, the gay rights movement, there was in American culture, especially, there was kind of a presumption that would meet and marry a woman and produce offspring, and that was how it went. The priesthood was kind of a convenient way to be like, oh, no, that's okay. Not for me. I'm just going to be celibate. It was kind of a great, a sort of a very obvious dodge for homosexual men to escape from, the kind of standard heterosexual, programming.
Have I ever mentioned on the show, Richie, that my paternal grandfather went back, actually not far from where you are, and was in the seminary and was headed for the priesthood after high school. Oh. And he went through 3 years of seminary training and mysteriously did not return for the fourth. And it was, there was never any clear indicator, but after having a conversation with my grandfather's sister, assumed that it may have had something to do with one of his best friends there. And when my partner and I were going through some photographs and working on putting together a calendar for the family several years ago, including some of the old ancient photographs, there was one in particular where they were in their church best, in their robes and such, that we kind of got the idea that they might have been a little closer than others necessarily would have liked them to have been. And of course, my grandfather and grandmother ended up having 4 children of their own and all that. But that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that somebody couldn't have been bisexual or anything like that. And there, I'm sure, is a lot of this because some people, and I have other friends whose families really put the onus on them to do, to do right by their family and to do the honorable thing and become a priest. And so I've had a number of people that I've personally known or who have been the priests in various parishes that I have grown up in that either eventually came out and, identified as gay, or who actually ended up leaving the church because they wanted to get married to a female partner. So, a lot of people who've kind of broken the code, and I'm just happy that Pope Francis is making at least this happen so we can acknowledge that they're here and they're among us, but we're asking that if they're going to do this, that they make a free choice on their own to not engage in being other than celibate.
Right. And I think it kind of, this is one of these decisions that I think is going to make no one happy, because I think it's going to make a few people happy. Yeah. It's going to make some people happy. But I think there are a lot of people who are traditionalists who don't want gays acknowledged at all. And then there's a big,
because we're not here.
Right, we don't exist. And then there's another tranche of kind of progressive type Catholics who don't think that there should be a requirement to be celibate for priests at all, whether straight or gay. And so this is kind of like, in a way,
I've seen a couple of them at orgies. I would agree.
But yeah, so this story was interesting. Again, I think it is codifying something that we all have known to be true forever. So, but little baby steps. We'll take a baby step from Pope Francis.
A baby step towards DEI in the Catholic Church. In the wake of pressure to scale back diversity efforts, the Human Rights Campaign, HRC, their foundation has reported positive trends in LGBTQ plus workplace equality in corporate America. Yeah, we've been telling you about all the fouls and all the things that we think that they have not been responsive to over the past several months with our friend Robbie Starbuck. And I say that facetiously, but the HRC is now saying that some of these companies, that they're showing strides, highlighting a 5% increase in participation from 1,449 companies. Among them, 72 joined the index for the first time. This year, 765 companies earned perfect scores, a record 28% increase, reflecting significant improvement from the previous year. The report highlights that 98% of these companies now include sexual orientation and gender identity in non-discrimination policies. That's not bad. With 82% of them offering equivalent spousal benefits, and 87% provide equal health care coverage for transgender employees. Wow. HRC President Kelly Robinson applauds these companies, as do Richie and I, for enhancing inclusion and stating that such efforts spur competitiveness and creativity as some firms are quietly adjusting DEI programs. HRC says that they're continuing to advocate for transparent, equitable workplace practices, reinforcing that corporate commitment to inclusion remains strong. Now, I want to see that list, of course. I'm not just going to take it at face value, but if what they say is true, that's decent trend.
I totally am with you on this. I think I have a couple thoughts at the same time. One is this highlights the fact that sometimes we have cognitive biases based on recency and on kind of loudness, and the Robbie Starbuckses of the world, making a big splash and a to-do with a handful of companies. Maybe that is overstating what's really happening. At the same time, I don't know if that's true, because we're seeing major companies like Toyota and Amazon and Meta just kind of ditching DEI and LGBTQ left and right. I would like to see, and I don't know,
Wait, did Amazon do it?
Amazon. I read a story that Amazon is moving towards ditching some DEI, and we'll have to look into that further and sort of cover that in a more fulsome way. Yeah. But I read at least like sort of a passing reference to that, and it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, given Jeff Bezos's warming up or cuddling up to Trump. Even in that regard, recently the Washington Post did I don't know if it was an endorsement or just a sort of appreciation of Pam Bondi as Attorney General candidate. This is someone who is a total partisan, a total hack, and previously a lobbyist for Amazon. And so, for the Washington Post to kind of put this out is a little bit much. So
yeah, she's previously been awarded the TCF honors, top cunts of Florida, but she is far and away one of Trump's loudest supporters from the place where they grow oranges.
Yeah. So, I think what I would like to see, and I want to do some poking around, is how the data in the Corporate Equality Index, how is it available? Because, they mention things like 72 companies joined the index for the first time. What are these companies? Are these big companies? Are these tiny companies? I'm curious what the companies are, and then also things like, 765 companies earned perfect scores, a record 28% increase. Have the goalposts changed at all? Has the index been static?
You want to make sure that they're not just having their employees and members run out and form a, quick little sole proprietorship that, sells things that they print from their home printers or 3D printers. We have a friend who does a lot of that stuff. I don't want to hear that this is a one-person business, that it was created just for the purpose of getting those numbers up.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways in which I want to know more. Just a press release saying things are rosy, given what we've seen just in coverage and sort of in the kind of general, in the miasma of kind of anti-gay, anti-DEI sentiments. I want details. And, again, the perfect score, has the scoring been the same? Have they changed any of the requirements? Have the goalposts changed over time? Have they made it easier to get a perfect score? I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer to any of these things. I would like someone with a sort of statistician mind than I have, because I'm terrible at numbers, to crunch the numbers and really figure out what the story is here. Whether this is a great story, or maybe not so rosy after all.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we should think about trying to have somebody from the HRC come on the show and put these questions to them.
Mm-hmm. That would be great. I mean, I'd love to. Just, we've talked a lot about them, and I feel like, it would be great to give them a chance to say their side of things, why they've been asleep at the switch for years.
Well, as you know, next weekend, I'm going to be in Las Vegas for the National Lesbian, Gay, Bi, Trans, Queer Task Force's Creating Change Conference. And there will be people there from all sorts of organizations. And I'm going to be looking for people to talk with about these kinds of concerns that we have, and whether it's people who are with the other national organizations or people who are also, as activists, staying on top of those people. I want to find those voices and invite them to come and to be participants in our forum here each week. So hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do that while I'm away next week. And before we move on to the next story, I want to slide one in here really quick, because in the last week, there was another story that we didn't put into our news list, but I didn't necessarily think it deserved to have story attention, but it was an occasion that I think caught a lot of us off guard because we thought she was already dead. It turned out that Anita Bryant, who was for many years the spokesperson that was out there on behalf of the Florida orange growers, that she passed away. And of course, she was in her day, like back in the early mid, she was seen as being an advocate for the homophobes, and she had no problem expressing her distaste for queers, except she got a face full of flavor one particular day when she was fed a fruit pie in the face.
We're met with protest and all kinds of problems, and every...
Security agent. No, let him stay.
No.
Let him stay.
Well, at least it's a fruit pie.
Let's pray for him right now. Anita, let's pray. Anita, why don't you pray? That's all right.
Father, we want to thank you for the opportunity of coming to Des Moines. And Father, I want to ask that you forgive him.
That we love him.
And that we love him. And that we're praying for him to be delivered from his deviant lifestyle, Father. And I just...
We forgive you, and we love you.
Thank you. Could we ask you to leave?
I don't want this man touched or harmed in any way.
I'll leave. All right, I don't mind.
You have done your cause more harm.
Thus always to bigots.
Do you know who's here?
Thus always to
You
bigots.
know who saw you do that?
We welcome you to the Midwest. We hope you come back.
Do you know who saw you do that?
We love you as a person.
This man is from Rolling Stone magazine.
We love
Do you know
as a
what kind of
person,
publicity
Anita.
you're going to get?
We can't stand the garbage you spout.
Leave him alone. Do not touch him.
Yes, I certainly think so. It's not bad.
It was awfully funny the first time I saw that, Richie. I don't know about you, but, if anybody deserved a pie in the face, it was her, although her response was hysterical.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of like had a quippy rejoinder. I will say, to add to this little story, there is a great song about Anita Bryant, and everyone should listen to the song. It is by David Allan Coe, who is a sort of outlaw country oddball. He's all over the place, and a lot of he's not fully kosher at any time, but he did a song that is called Fuck Anita Bryant, and it is incredible. And it is, you have to listen to it. So if you've not heard Fuck Anita Bryant by David Allan Coe, go listen to it. And that I think that will be kind of a nice little cap on that person's particularly odious life.
Well, speaking of them, I understand that the Sunshine State has revoked somebody's driver's license.
Yes. So this is, again, this is DeSantis's land, Sunshine State, so-called. But Florida has revoked the reissued driver's license of a TikTok user named James Rose, who identifies as non-binary, transgender, and uses she, they pronouns. So earlier, Rose posted a video claiming success in altering their gender marker to female, despite Florida's prohibitive laws about changing your driver's license. Rose shared a method to change the gender marker via passport documentation, stating that Governor Ron DeSantis wouldn't approve if aware. And so basically what it was is you say that you lost your driver's license, and then you go to the DMV or whatever to show them proof of, a documentation, and they'll issue you a new driver's license. And they used a passport, and their passport has their correct marker, which is an F instead of an M. So they issued the driver's license with the F. After Rose's TikTok post, which is basically like, hey, just clever hack. The post has since been deleted. The Florida Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles department or whatever cited improper gender designation on the license. They issued a corrected license marking male, and warned Rose of potential legal repercussions for allegedly false statements about losing the original license. The anti-LGBT posting site Libs of TikTok, this is Chaya Rychik, we've talked about this awful person before, highlighted the incident, which drew further attention to it. Governor DeSantis' spokesperson, not surprisingly, misgendered Rose while discussing the issue. Equality Florida's Nadine Smith condemned the state's policy changes, calling them a threat to the daily lives of Florida's trans residents, underscoring issues of discrimination and safety. And, it really makes a perfect point here, because it does not make anyone's life better, and it actually makes people's lives much worse when you have basic identity documents that don't correspond. You have your federal passport that has your correct gender marker based on your gender identity, and then you have this driver's license that has to be based on, your sex assigned at birth. And so none of your documents make sense with each other. It's ludicrous. And, we're not going to see, I think we're going to see more of this kind of stuff again going forward, with more states kind of doing this sex assigned at birth nonsense. This just goes again to kind of show where things are at in Florida, that they are so, they don't have, they've got extra time in their hands. They don't have to deal with things like hurricane cleanup or dealing with, opiate addiction or any of these other things. Why would they bother attending to that when they can harass one trans person who happened to get a correct driver's license?
Yeah, I feel like I'm just out of stuff to say on this topic, because I just feel like a broken record.
Yeah. And I think, we'll just keep highlighting.
That's what they want us to do, to quit talking about it. We're not going to do that, of course.
Yeah.
But they just want us to all go away, and that we don't exist as far as they're concerned. And the problem is that we do exist, and that we need to be as much of a pain in the ass for them as they are for us, until they just realize that, like a cockroach, we're not going away ever. We will be here after the nuclear blast.
Yeah. Exactly. So, we'll keep highlighting these stories, both wins and losses. But, this is definitely, as we've said in recent episodes, the Republicans and the right have just decided that the existence of trans people is just going to be this cudgel that they're just going to bang America with forever until trans people just, in their minds, they just hope trans people just stop existing and just they can erase them, which they obviously can't. But in the meantime, it's just everyone's life is going to be more miserable because of it.
Well, remember, too, that for so long they wanted to do the same thing with gay men and lesbians. Mm-hmm. And, trans people were the ones who really took it in the shorts because they were last in line. And they didn't have to deal with us anymore because it was easier to hate them and to get more people on board, as we've seen in our own community with all of the stupid motherfuckers who are in the LGBTQ community that are in that whole LGB without the T way of thinking. And so long as we can push the attention over to somebody else and keep it off of us, people are cool with that. And I don't know what it's going to take, but at some point in time, people are just going to need to realize that they shouldn't be cool with anybody being at the blunt end of a hammer from anyone. And that we need to stand up for one another, and that it doesn't make any difference how or what you love or who you are gender-wise, that you have a right to exist, and that is not somebody else's decision to make a determination that you don't have a right to live your life. You're breathing, you're living, let them be. I hear all these people who, talk about how critical it is that we not let anybody have an abortion, that every life is so meaningful. And then the way we see those same people treat our trans brothers and sisters, and in the past, and even still in many cases today, us, in terms of lesbians and gay men, it's so insulting to think that these people have a value for somebody else's life that they know nothing about, but not for somebody else,
And just, and the thing that is truly sad about the sort of the LGB without the T idea is you can be a gay, white, cis man. You can wear your khaki pants and your button down shirt and live in the right suburb in your red state with your husband. And guess what? They won't care. If they can overturn Obergefell, you will be the first person that they won't care about. And so you'll be sitting there being like, I'm a log cabin Republican. I supported Trump. They don't care about you. So there's this false idea that you've already won, and so leave the trans community out to dry. As we've seen, they will not rest until they can try to roll back every social, act of progress since basically Brown versus Board of Education, and probably even before that. There are certain people. I imagine J.D. Vance would like women to have to wear hoop skirts. It's so. That even just from a kind of practical stance, like these LGBT without the T people.
Do you think that he would want them to wear those because it might emulate something more akin to a sofa, or
maybe so? Yeah, with some nice tapestries. Yeah,
we do have some good news to wrap up with.
We do, and we love good news. We usually try to sprinkle it in, and we always like to end on a high note. So, in a historic ceremony on January 6th, Dr. Elizabeth Steiner was sworn in as Oregon's first female LGBTQ and Jewish treasurer in 150 years. An enthusiastic crowd applauded as Governor Tina Kotek, herself an out lesbian and one of the nation's first lesbian governors, who administered the oath. Steiner, who is bisexual and a mother of three, addressed financial challenges faced by many Oregonians, highlighting that unexpected expenses can lead to significant hardship. She emphasized her commitment to improving financial security by doubling the percentage of children with college savings plans and ensuring the majority of residents are prepared for retirement. These are great goals. I love all of that. Additionally, Steiner aims to establish savings accounts for every child born in Oregon, accessible when they turn 18, and to expand the ABLE program, helping those with disabilities save without losing benefits. That's huge. Kotek expressed pride, aligning with Steiner on a vision of opportunity for all Oregonians to shape their futures. This is great.
It is great.
Good government, people who are interested in good government, good policy, level-headed folks who also happen to be members of our community. It's just a reminder to me, that of what governance should look like, because these are adults. And at the end of the day, what I've been really struck by when I hear about things like Trump and Musk and this whole coterie of people, these are in Zuckerberg, these are man babies. These are not serious adults. They're essentially children who do not have serious policy ideas apart from just enriching themselves at all turns. But they don't have they're not interested in good government. They're not interested in transparency, helping people, long-term goals, anything of the sort. And so it's good to see at the state level in a great state like Oregon, real adults who want to help people through governance. I mean, that's what we should strive for. So it makes me happy to see that there are people who still have that interest. But by contrast, we have people, including the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who are considering attaching strings to aid to California for these fires in Los Angeles, as recently as today, talking about how they, might release aid to California if they make some structural changes to things, including maybe the debt ceiling and mucking around with their environmental policies. And this is the opposite of good government. And this is grotesquerie at the highest level.
And these things, by the way, are non-starters when it comes. I mean, they're just non-negotiable. And I will tell you that if they keep moving this way, what they are going to have is they're going to have a legitimate move from the West Coast of the United States of America to begin looking at opportunity to secede from the rest of the nation, or at least the parts that are immediately to its east, because there are going to be a lot of people who can look at, and in fact, I was just studying this yesterday. A lot of people talk about the fact California is arguably the fourth, definitely the fifth, but it may be now the fourth largest economy in the world. And so I was interested in looking at what happens if California were no longer part of the Union, and from a standpoint of its economic power in America. And not only that, you also have to think about the fact that you have Silicon Valley here, you have Hollywood here, you have a lot of the food that is consumed across this country is grown here in California. So the impact that could exist, but I know that one of the things that I had heard that Governor Newsom had uttered previously was before they start saber rattling, they might want to think about what happens if in California we don't feed federal income tax to the government. Because when you look at the income here, when you look at the gross domestic product out of the Golden State alone, add to that, by the way, and if New York and California and Washington seceded, became their own union, we would have 25% of all of the economic power that the United States has. 25% from those three states. And, Florida and Texas are not going to make up for it. And the problem is that a lot of things that people elsewhere in the country come to depend upon and rely on the federal government giving assistance for when they have natural disasters, when they have other issues that have to be dealt with, and that we deal with them as a union. Well, it's going to be a little hard to pay the bills for those things if you don't have California and New York in the equation, because we're the train that drives tax revenue in America.
It's true. Unfortunately. One of the things, though, about this sort of line of thinking is at the end of the day, there's a big chunk of conservatives and Republicans who would not mind if the federal government stopped existing, because they don't like Social Security. They don't care about Medicare. They don't care about FEMA. They don't care about any of it. They don't like
the government, Richie. Richie, who is the government? The government is all of us.
I know what you're. I
It's
agree
you,
with you.
and it's me, and it's that person right there watching us. The problem is when they need to pick up the phone and call the fire department because their place is on fire, or somebody has robbed them or hurt them, or they need somebody to deal with the fact that there's crap in the street and they can't drive anywhere. You know, who's going to answer the phone?
I agree with you, but
get rid of the government. Who's going to answer the phone?
Obviously, I don't agree with their concept. But what I'm saying is that there are some people, these kind of, if you look back even to people like Grover Norquist, who talked about shrinking the federal government until you could drown it in a bathtub. This is bedrock conservative thinking. The only thing they care about really is the military. But every other piece of the federal government, they would just be happy with. And you look at Project 2025, they're interested in getting rid of the National, Oceanic Administration, getting rid of weather. They don't care. So, and yes, the people who are, the people will be absolutely immiserated by all of this. But because of campaign finance reform, because of gerrymandering, and because of increased polarization, especially in the House, they don't care. The people who are actually there don't care because they're safe seats. And you have insane people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and all of these yahoos who get reelected, who don't actually care to govern. And you have Trump, who's looking to install at cabinet level positions people who want to dismantle the very thing they're in charge of. And so, there won't be a phone number to call. Right. We'll see what happens. It's not going to be pretty. And like you said, a lot of the people who really rely on a lot of these services and rely on the tax revenues that come from blue states will be surprised and probably pretty upset when their disability checks bounce or don't come anymore. And when, things like, federal grants to run daycares and old folks homes and community centers.
When they have to keep a job until the day they die.
Yeah, all of that. They won't be happy about it, but it's too late because that stuff has taken decades to put in place and nurture and keep going. Mm-hmm. You can't rebuild it in a heartbeat. Especially now that we have a Supreme Court that, has gotten rid of Chevron deference, that is very much against any kind of gap filling by the administrative state. And so you have to pass legislation that will never pass in order to rebuild things. So we're running on fumes in that regard. And so if this stuff gets struck down, we're not getting it back anytime soon. And that's really shitty.
It is. And maybe that's what it's going to take to wake some people up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and, California is, paying a huge price right now. Southern California and the Los Angeles area with the fires that are going on there and people who have enormous wealth who have little else. And if you didn't have those services that are doing God's work now to try and save the place, it's wait till it comes and it gets you. Our friends in Texas saw that in a winter storm not that many years back. They lost all their power and they, some of them froze to death.
Yeah. And again, that's a direct result of things like deregulation of the grid, with the idea that it would make it somehow cheaper. It actually never did. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So,
bye-bye, Grandma. Sorry, you got cold.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at. That's where we're at right now. So anyway, but we will see. Maybe in a couple of years, California, Oregon, and Washington will become new provinces of Canada. And there will be the New England will be the confederated states of the New England order. Who knows? But we'll keep an eye on it. In the meantime,
we have one last thing to talk about before we go. Okay. Because before we are back for another edition of Newsday Tuesday, there is this little event that's going on. It will amuse me to no end if it's another record-setting event in terms of how many people don't show up. But they're having a little party out on the Washington Mall next Monday. And it's going to be the beginning of a shit show like we have never seen before, I think. Because we have seen some of it before. It's a matter of how how much crazier can it get? And so I don't know about you. I've been thinking about what am I going to do when all that activity is going on? Will I be in front of a television set? No, I won't. Will I have a radio or my cell phone with me to be tuned in like I'm, listening to a first century transistor radio? No, I probably won't. What I'm going to do, especially between about 8 and 10 a.m. Pacific time that day, is I'm going to do my best to just stay in bed and sleep through it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to be awake and to know and to see what's coming. Just hit me with it. Let's get it over with. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and get moving on. And that's what we will do ongoing on this program this year, because there's nothing we can do to stop the Trump train at this point. It's here.
The train is pulling into the station, and we will see,
Are you going to get drunk?
I think what I'll probably do is I have a DVD. It's a 4-hour opera. It is Philip Glass's Einstein on the Beach. It's 4 hours long, and I might just put that on and just zone out, and just that's what I'll do.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Because I want you to think about anything that can take your mind off of that thing.
Exactly.
Because that's the last thing I want to be thinking about ever.
100%.
Okay, I'm with you. Let's wrap it up, and thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Richie, you want to give everybody the contact info?
Absolutely. So the best place to reach us is our website, richieandjohn.com. You'll find the show there. You'll find resources. You'll find a contact form. You'll find everything you need to know about the show and more. So it's richieandjohn.com. That's RICHIEANDJOHN.com. If you want to reach us through email, if you still use that form of communication, it is info@richieandjohn.com. And then if you want to use an even more archaic form of communication, the telephone number is 878-768-8825. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what your thoughts are on this show or any of our shows. If you have plans upcoming, what you're going to do on Inauguration Day or the day before when there's supposedly supposed to be a rally, give us your coping strategies, all of the above. Maybe a signature cocktail that you have planned for the resistance. Yeah, give us a shout, and we would love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Until Saturday, we will hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you for joining us on Richie and John. This podcast is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System and is available at richieandjohn.com, as well as most major podcast portals, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify.